Welcome back to The Experience. Today my guest is Vincent Veda. If you didn't tune in last week, Vincent came on the show and was describing his experience with psilocybin mushrooms and his journey on becoming a shaman.
I wouldn't consider myself one yet, but I did have a customer say I put the man in shaman the other day.
Shaman. Ooh, yeah, man. So he is here with part 2 of this episode to explain to us his journey. And last week we were talking about your experience in my plant ceremony with the ayahuasca and the DMT.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the first time you did DMT.
Oh, yeah.
With the asthma.
So I had asthma my whole life. It was pretty bad as a child in the hospital all the time. And then as an adult, about twice a year when the seasons changed. And so asthma for me always came on as sort of an itch in my upper respiratory cavities, usually on this left side. I would feel it for a day or two before I would come down with asthma.
The left pectoral?
Yeah, inside the lung, I'd breathe in and I'd feel this little, and I would know that the asthma's coming. Huh. And so I never, ever, ever had a case of asthma that didn't start with that itch. And I never in my life had that itch that didn't end in asthma. Damn. And so I had this DMT for a while. I hadn't touched it. It was not going to be an easy thing to do alone because I would pass out with this hot pipe, essentially. And for whatever reason, I got just the urge to do it when I was coming down with asthma. I felt that itch. I had already been to the pharmacy and got my prescriptions. I mean, I was 100% sure asthma is coming tomorrow. Yeah. The next day, let's get my medicine in line. Okay. And so for whatever reason, I mean, there's no reason. It's the plant spirit just sort of manipulating your thought process. And right. I decide this is going to be the time to do it. And so I do this DMT. For people listening and watching, just a little background story. What is DMT? DMT, dimethyltryptamine, is essentially a chemical produced by the brain. Some dispute about where exactly that takes place, but in my experience, it's the pineal gland. But you don't really do anything with this chemical throughout your whole life until you die, and then your brain is flooded essentially with this chemical. Correct. You can extract it from plant material and induce it in the same way that it induces on its own at death. Okay. And so it feels a lot like that. It feels a lot like dying very fast, too. Right. And so I do this DMT for whatever reason when I'm about to come down with asthma. And I pass right out.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah. And I leave my body and I take off through outer space. I go through a nebula. And then I sort of rise up into this, what I would consider a spaceship. Mm-hmm. This is how it felt. It felt like I was rising up into this well-lit surgical room, and there was one of the DMT elves there. And he's looking at me, and when I look at him, I had his line of sight, and I became him looking at me, and I see me laying on a table. Oh, shit. And he sort of zooms in on me like you would a picture on a phone. Huh. And zooms in, and now the picture is just my shirt, my chest, and he zooms in again, and it's my chest and the hair and skin. Zooms in again, and he's in bone, and then he zooms in again, and he's in my lung, and there's a little tiny black speck. Huh. And he takes this black speck out, and then everything zooms out, and then I'm him looking at me. I see me on the table, and then all of a sudden I'm me again. I'm looking up at him. And then there's another elf behind him waving goodbye. And I drop out of the spaceship and I go right back through outer space, through the nebula, all the way back to my little room where I had asthma. And I never got asthma then, never had it again since. I've never taken any asthma medicine since. It's been completely eradicated as far as I'm concerned.
Dude, what?
It was 100% the cure of my asthma.
So did you try to go to the doctor after and say, hey?
No.
Like you
Why go to the doctor after that?
You could feel that it's not there.
Yeah, it was gone.
Well, all right, we're gonna get to how does one do DMT, right? Because I mean, I know how it's done, but like, what's the the proper preparation for it?
As I have no idea. And so
Gotcha.
I tell people that unfortunately when it comes to DMT, I don't know how to control. I don't have enough experience. I don't know how you control such a.
Well, how do you take it? I guess that's what I meant to say.
So this was in powder form that
Okay.
you would smoke.
Right.
And I recommend a low temp dab rig.
Gotcha.
Where you keep the powder in a little glass bucket separately from the bucket that you heat up, and then drop it in cold so it heats up slowly. You're hitting it at the right temperature. But there's other ways you can put it on a weed pipe if you want to. I don't recommend it that way because I think it's too easy to mess up.
Right. Yeah, it's got that weird plasticky smell.
And then there's oil burners you can use.
Okay.
And so that's how I did it. I had an oil burner.
And then right when you hit it, you're there.
Yeah. Within 2 seconds, you're at a full blown LSD trip, and within about 5 seconds, it's almost too much to handle. And so how to direct it to target a specific thing, I don't know. I've had lots of experiences where it's targeted things. And I would say that it's essentially the same way as mushrooms, where you just have it on the surface level of your mind, appease the plant spirit. But, I mean, DMT can just go off the rails.
Well, how similar would you say like DMT and psilocybin mushrooms are?
I would say they're not similar at all.
Not similar.
I would say
Two different
DMT
trips.
is an entire mushroom trip, an entire 6-hour mushroom trip condensed into about a 20-minute zip drive.
So that DMT trip that kind of lasted about 20 minutes.
No, I don't think it lasted nowhere near that long.
Yeah, because I think my
it
first
was
experience
fast.
was like some of it when I was with the shamans doing the physical ceremony, that was probably like the longest like session I had of a DMT trip, which was almost like 2 minutes maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time I did it, it was like less than 10 seconds. But
Yeah, I would give this one no more than 8 minutes, probably closer to 5.
But it feels like
it was fast, very fast. But
Okay.
Whatever, there was a black speck that he took out that I saw, and he pulled it out. It was just a tiny black speck
Okay.
that I attributed to an allergen of some sort, you know.
What happened after that, man? Like, so now you don't have asthma. You just
Never had it
experienced-
again.
So from that experience, what did you do moving forward?
I respected the DMT 100% as a very, very powerful medicine. I don't use it recreationally. I don't recommend it recreationally.
Yeah.
I recommend it to people to experience for the first time for sure,
Yes,
to
for
see
sure.
what it's about.
Correct.
And then if you really have an understanding of plant medicine, then you'd recognize this is a very powerful medicine that shouldn't be taken lightly, shouldn't be done recreationally. It's definitely got its therapeutic uses. I'm just not there yet because, again, I consider myself to just be scratching the surface on mushrooms.
Yeah, man.
You know, I just don't have time to be high on DMT all the time.
Yeah,
trying to,
no.
how do we map this out?
Well, that's what I thought was even funny about my experience at the ceremony. I was like, well, why would y'all want me to hit the DMT pen if I'm about to blast off the ayahuasca? But they were like, no, this is going to jumpstart it. And I was like so afraid to feel, you know, because obviously this is my first time. You know, I'm like, oh, I've done DMT before. I don't care about that right now. But I didn't realize they all kind of worked in one. Like the combo works with the ayahuasca, the DMT works with the, you know, all that stuff. But
we can do
Oh, yeah.
DMT right now.
maybe after the show, I don't want to. I don't want to get off track, but yeah, that's exactly what theirs looked like, and even from the specificity of how they want you to inhale it, because you know, my first time experiencing that. You know, I was with my buddy, and he walked me through it, and he's pretty sciencey about things, and he takes things very serious. But it wasn't the same experience as it was with the shamans. I mean, man, just from the way, like, they're like, hey, breathe like this. Yeah. And they know how to set you into that tone. So that's basically what you're doing for people with mushrooms.
Yeah. I do a lot of sort of scripting their mushroom trips. They'll tell me
like if
their issue, and,
Okay.
and I'll sort of prescribe a way for them to do it.
Are you because I didn't get a chance to talk to you at the party that we did a couple months ago because you were busy working, I was working. But do you actually host events for people to take a trip, like, or what do you do?
So I was sort of planning everything in Alaska to go that route.
Okay.
And that's still more or less the plan.
Okay.
But when I get settled into Alaska, I want to be able to settle in year long. And so for the 7 months of winter, you know, there needs to be some income coming in. I won't have, you know, an abundance of people with problems showing up for a retreat when it's -20 outside. So that's where the Vincent Veda Entheogens is, the retail side
Yes.
that has the edibles and the supplements. And, I'm hoping to get enough business garnished down here,
Right.
enough online business that'll.
So people will go to the retail to pick up the medicine. In a sense.
Yeah, you can't really order through my website. You've got to contact me directly.
Okay.
Make sure that I'm,
Available.
Yeah, not in jail and.
And like in your second business, the Mirrors for the Blind ministry, is that the physical?
So that's the ministry side of what I do: the yoga, the meditation, and the therapeutic mushroom trips.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
It all falls under the Mirrors for the Blind. And so that's what I'm kind of gearing towards for Alaska, for a yoga and meditation retreat that comes with this therapeutic mushroom trip at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would always recommend that the people that come to me would go through these, yoga and meditation steps before they get to this mind-blowing trip. For
Why yoga and meditation?
It's the path it put me on, and so that's the path that I know. You teach people the route that you went.
Do you think it has anything like the yoga and meditation correlates with the same experiences on, psilocybin and things like that? Like, the breathing, the euphoric feelings you get from like meditation and breathing, things like that? Or what do you think all that correlates? Like, why are those supposed to be a pack deal?
It's not, because the mushrooms will put somebody on a path of Christianity just as easy. That won't have anything to do with meditation or yoga.
Okay.
I've seen it happen. Growing up, I've made fun of those guys that, had that
found God.
Can't handle his mushrooms and went to Bible camp,
pussy.
And then I have the same mind-blowing one. I become a minister. It was a big, long-standing joke between all my friends. It's like Vinny got the spiritual trip. And,
what happened? What did he took? I'm going to stay away from that.
So it'll send people on different paths, the path that they're ready for.
Right.
And so that's why it's become a part of my path, is just because it's the one they sent me on. It's the one that I know works. So this is what I recommend to people that come to me.
So if I came to you, per se, which we're going to talk after the show, what would you recommend for a person like me, or what do they do when they come to you? They're like, hey, Vincent, I have depression, or I have what does somebody come to you? How do they?
So they'll tell me what their issues are. So we'll use Bruce as an example. He's out of Norfolk, and he's got a pretty well-known case that he's not ashamed to advertise. His son was a schizophrenic,
okay.
and he had a pretty violent episode, and he took an axe and split his dad's head open, Bruce. So Bruce has brain damage, PTSD, and a lot of guilt from feeling like he didn't do enough for his son. And so he finds me out in Vegas on Fremont Street and buys some brownies from me. And he had no idea what he was getting into. And I had no idea what his problems were either. He just, I want to try these. And the very next day, he's calling me up. He wants to come and see me. And he got real emotional, told me his whole story. He showed me the news articles and stuff, because he's actually started a mental health awareness coalition out there in Norfolk after this. Nice. And so he's real big into the mental health community out there. But he didn't know what was going on, how this, this little brownie that I sold him is just changing everything. And I explained to him how it's just sort of decomposing the negative energy that's in there, because it doesn't know the difference between negative energy in your mind and negative energy in a decaying animal on the forest floor.
Right.
And as soon as I sort of, explained it to him, you see the light bulb went off, and he's like, yeah, that's exactly what it's doing. It's decomposing my guilt. I'm feeling less guilt. And so, essentially you would tell me what the issue was, what the problem was, and I sort of script, your mushroom trip around it. I recommend food, diet, I recommend a meditation, sort of specific meditation to what you're doing.
How do you meditate, man? Because I'm still experimenting with that. I've been, I've had a few different people teach me. I've done it, different classes, but like, what's your meditation?
So essentially there's lots of different ways to meditate, lots of
Correct.
different types of meditate. But for me, it's just silent breath meditation, just noticing the mind and just constantly reinforcing the idea that you're not the mind. You're not the mind. You know, sit quietly, and as soon as you try to get quiet, it goes off.
But the breath
how's
is
it going
important.
off if you're trying to be quiet? Who are you? Are you the one trying to be quiet or the one trying to make noise? You know, and so it's for me essentially just the more quiet, the more you know, you're getting into reality.
Damn.
Because everything in what we call reality is birthed from a background of silence. So
Wow.
you know, silence is where our true home is.
Well, it's like you said when you first came on the first episode, like these mushrooms, these plants, the other side of them is I forgot how you explained it. Like their properties, their own, how did you describe it when I sat that on the table?
It's its own conscious entity. It's an individual, separate plant spirit energy.
It's a life
that
form.
is conscious.
Yes, yes, it's a conscious
plant spirit. And so the elf creatures that you see in the DMT trips is your mind sort of making things up because it doesn't understand plant spirit, which is essentially emptiness. The empty space in atoms is where your plant spirit resides, where your spiritual energy resides. Your mind isn't capable of comprehending that. Dude. It's just not. And so it makes up these creatures. You know, this creature is doing surgery on your lung because it doesn't know how else to explain it, you know. I'm
glad. So you just kind of like explained something for me that I've been having like in my damn head since September, the night that the ayahuasca finally kicked in.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I would say like, I guess I saw Mother Ayahuasca, but it wasn't a human. It was blackness, but it was almost like a flower with a face, but it was, you remember that movie when he where the plant was coming to life, Little Shop of Horrors? Mm-hmm. You remember that? It was almost like that voice, but it wasn't saying anything, but it was like that face but I knew it was the ayahuasca. I knew it was Mother Ayahuasca, so I was like, this is crazy. But at the same time, it was in different forms throughout the night.
Yeah.
So that makes sense what you said about the brain trying to, like, what is it?
Yeah, it's just like, trying to put together something to make sense because it can't comprehend emptiness as being a thing. Yeah. It can't comprehend the empty space inside an atom as being anything. It's just not capable of that.
Yeah, it's like when I did the next day when you wake up and the end of the ceremony, we did Bufo. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, I let everybody go because, you know, I wasn't ready, but I knew I was going last. Yeah. And, you know, because I kept watching people. I'm watching them prep them. You know, the shamans like this and that. And you're seeing all these different experiences from people. Some people are fucking getting up off the floor. Some people are like rolling around, but they never realized that they even moved. Yeah. So when I did it, you know, and he's like prepping you and they're lighting it up and you're just kind of sitting there and the way that you're supposed to breathe in and out. Dude, when I hit that shit, I felt like everything went dark. Yeah. But at the same time, I guess it's like the teleportation or the time traveling. It almost reminds me of like Thor Ragnarok. I didn't see anything, but I can paint you like all these different pictures in my head of like what. Yeah. It's weird. It's still like, so that's the hard part to process is like, I don't know what that is. But that's what I felt like I went through. Yeah. And it was wild, man.
Yeah. Mine's not evolved enough to comprehend what goes on with these things.
So I asked you this on the phone when we first started chatting about coming to the studio. LSD and psilocybin or mushrooms, right? What's the difference? Like, because obviously I've talked to you about
I tell people that mushrooms are more intense and don't last as long. LSD is less intense and lasts longer. But LSD can be just as intense as mushrooms for some, and mushrooms can be, you know, way less intense for others.
Correct. And for folks at home that, you know, when you hear LSD, you hear, you know, when you're a kid, you're taught like, oh, LSD is bad. You know, there's people that have like, you know, done crazy. Yeah, obviously killed themselves. Like one guy thought he had aliens on him and he's like, you know, cutting his skin off. Is LSD a chemical? Is it man-made or is it?
So it comes from the ergot fungus. Okay. It's essentially a fungus, just like mushrooms. It's only microscopically different in chemical composure.
Okay.
I think a nitrogen atom at best. And so it's synthesized now, but and you know, when people think synthesized, they think fake. But at the same time, you know, mushrooms are all lab grown now, and it's essentially the same thing as far as I'm concerned.
Right, you have to grow it and then cure it, and there's a process to make LSD that
for
you
me,
drop.
it's completely indispensable in my arsenal of things. Like I've got a guy out in California, Dung. He's ex-military, PTSD, and he's on serotonin blockers for his PTSD. The mushrooms didn't get through to this guy at all.
Oh, wow.
And so I gave him heavy doses, and I had him do all kinds of soak it in lime juice and take thousands of milligrams of lion's mane. Like, let's just try and knock this out of the water, my guy.
Right.
And nothing. He felt nothing. And so LSD works on the same serotonin, but for some reason it's on a more subtle vibration. Yeah. And it can get through where mushrooms don't. And so I send this guy some LSD. I was like, all right, we're going to try LSD. That's our next step. And I'm giving you a high dose, and just because we don't know, and I'm not going to give you any directions. I'm not going to explain it. Just eat it and see what happens and let me know. But I'm warning you, if it does work, gonna be a pretty heavy dose.
Right. Be
and
ready.
I was really worried about this guy. You know, we had a few months history already back and forth, you know, over the mushroom trips, and I really wanted to help him out. And so I'm on Fremont Street in Vegas, and I'm just, you know, not even having a good night. I just keep thinking of this guy.
How many like was it like on like the little paper?
So I gave him liquid on breath mints, and I did just.
Right. So how many hits?
Sorry, Doug. I gave you some heavy drops.
See,
he knew.
Well, that's the shit that scares me, man. Not scares me. Like, so in high school, the only time I took that was an entire hit, and it was not a good experience in the beginning. Yeah. And then towards the end, it was like, whoa, shit. Then the next day, I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe I just did that. But when I had a friend show me how to microdose it. Yeah. Like quarter hits, I would say. Yeah. It almost, for me, it's almost like taking Adderall, but a little better. It's almost like somebody gave me something that like woke up my senses, and I feel like I can breathe better, smell better, hear better, see
that's
shit
essentially
better.
What happened with this guy. I gave him the heavy trip at first, and he's been microdosing since.
Well, and that's what I was going to get to. It's like I feel like since I started doing that, I am on that journey of, you know, I really don't think you should be taking Adderall because it's considered, you know, methamphetamines. But people are going to disagree because they're going to think acid is a chemical that's, you know, poison. When realistically, it's like, no, man, it opens up the pathways of the brain. So continue with your.
Oh, so I'm walking home from Fremont Street. I hadn't heard from him. It's been hours and hours. I'm worried, and so I sent him a text. You know, hey, either it worked and you're still in the middle of a phenomenal experience, or it didn't work and you fell right asleep. I just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. And he texts back, dude. Dude.
Right.
Next
He's
text,
never said dude before either.
There's been spirits around us the whole time. He had no ideas of spirituality whatsoever.
No
but
shit.
He entered the spirit world. He's talking about ghosts in his room watching him. I was like, I just get used to it.
Well, I think that's what I saw during the thing. It was like, I thought it was like shadow ninjas, but maybe.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I was also in Lafitte. I didn't know any of that at the time. I thought it was like,
there's been spirits around the whole time and nobody told me. And so he went from that to microdosing, and he's been having phenomenal results. And for me personally, after I had the major mushroom trip, quit, the mushrooms wanted me to get back to this sort of state of mind without mushrooms whatsoever, through meditation alone. And so I'd quit using mushrooms completely, and I went on LSD every week. Because it was helping so much with meditation because of the amount of time that you would have. You know, I would have 8-10 hour trips as opposed to just the 4 on mushrooms, but they were more subtle. And so I'd spend the whole trip in meditation.
Oh, wow.
And where it really was beneficial is at the end of your trip, when you're deep into this meditative state and you carry it into not being on LSD. And
Wow.
so the LSD would completely wear off, but I would still be in this meditative state for a couple hours afterwards. And so that really helped a lot with learning how to meditate.
Okay, well, thank you for saying that, because I'm going to talk about that with you later, because that's definitely something that I've been thinking about. And because I feel like personally, a microdose of LSD for me is like, you might as well not give me the Adderall anymore, because that works better.
Yeah.
And there's no come down. Like, you feel like better. Like, the next day you fucking feel great. Like, I'm like, man, life's good. Like, what do people, but with the Adderall, like the next day, depending on your dose, it's like, you know, you're mad at the world, you're depressed, or, you know, your brain feels drained. So like you need more of that to put you back on that same.
And it's so cost effective. I mean,
for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is.
This guy's microdosing LSD now. And so, you know, he's getting, you know, three doses out of one hit. And it's saving him so much money, you know, in comparison to what he had been spending. And having phenomenal results. I got a history of text messaging. You know, this guy, one word answers or maybe no answers at all in the beginning when we're trying to do these mushroom trips. And then after the LSD, our conversations get long and deep and laughy faces. And
you notice, like, with him being one of your, like, what do you call these people? They're your patients? Clients, yes.
Well, Dung's now a friend. You know, he's crossed over that threshold into the friendship. You know, we've been at it for over a year now. Yeah,
I agree with that. I feel like everybody at the ceremony, we all got really like tight. And it's just like it's not the same. And they told me that. They're like, once you do this, man, like there's like, you're not going to be the same. Yeah. And I had to think about that for a minute. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
You can't put the veil back on.
No, man. And, but like, you don't want to, because you're like, oh man, like why was I, thinking like this before, or you're kind of almost like mad at yourself for being closed-minded, right? But yeah, dude.
I mean, for me, it's painted the picture of it all goes the way it's supposed to go, no matter what my struggles are. You know, they're all lessons. They're all meant for me to evolve, no matter how horrible the situation is. You know, with my son and whatnot, it's all. You know, these are the steps you have to take to evolve to where we want you to be.
Correct.
And I've got total faith in that. And I was hardcore atheist before that mushroom trip.
Right on.
I couldn't have been more atheist. Wow. And trying to explain to my atheist friends, no, you don't understand.
Right. And they're just like, no, dude, you don't know what you're talking about.
And so it wasn't really until, like, I knew there was something else. But I gave my kid one of these trips. And I was trying to explain to him, how all this was working. He said, we were wrong about atheism. And I'm telling you, this is a ghost. It's not just a mushroom. There's a fucking thing in there. And so I'm explaining this whole state of mind that I went into and yada, yada, yada. And he says, hey, you're talking about runner's high. I said, what?
Yeah.
He says, you're talking about runner's high. No, I'm not talking about runner's high, son. I'm talking about consciousness, pure consciousness. He says, no. When I ran that race, he ran a 50-mile race when he was 14 years old. And it was up and over 2 mountains. Phenomenal race. They said no 14-year-old will ever do. Don't come, they told us. Don't come up here. Your kid can't finish this race. It's a professional running course. White River 50-mile Ultra 2014. Jeez. And so I bring him up there. And he gets to the top of that first mountain, and it's a figure 8 course. And so start, finish, and middle is all in the same spot. And so he goes up and over the first mountain, and I'm standing next to the guy that told us not to come, nudging him like, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And so then he blows through the finish line, first place, 12 hours flat.
What?
Yeah. And had no idea he had done it. He thought he was at the halfway point.
Wow.
14-year-old kid, focused on his breath, not thinking about rent, not thinking about his asshole boss.
Yeah.
He connects to this space in his head, and he tells me then, when I'm giving him these mushrooms, this is like 6 years later, and I'm trying to explain consciousness. He's like, yeah, that's runner's high. I said, I got to the top of that mountain, that first mountain. I looked over the edge, and it was a cliff, thought for sure he wasn't going to make it. He's going to die, and he's going to trip and fall off that cliff and die. Huh. And he was really scared, and then he entered into this white space. And he doesn't remember anything after that, except at one point he got off the trail and went down this rocky embankment and laid into this icy river. And shocked his body back,
No
froze
shit.
all his muscles. He remembers that. He remembers getting back on the trail. These are points where he would have to pay attention, right? He'd have to come out of his mind,
Wow.
pay attention to his steps and what he was doing. And then he got back on the trail, got to running again, and blacked out again.
Dude, that's...
Doesn't remember. So when he told me that story, that sort of sealed the deal for me. That was like, now I know it's real. Because I was there. I saw him come through that finish line. So he was so far out of his mind, we called 911. And he'd finished the race, first place, 12 hours, but he didn't know
couldn't
he had
explain
finished. And he's 14 years old. He had no idea what had happened.
Wow.
And just let it go. It's runner's high.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Still has that record. Nobody will break that record.
I mean, it sounds like he was like David Goggins at 14 because he ran an 100-mile ultra marathon with no practice, no nothing.
Yeah, I lost all count of his marathons and 50s, and that was his first 50. And he'd never even seen a mountain before we went up there. He had just run through sugarcane fields in Lafayette, And so I brought him up there, and yeah, he smoked it, man.
Well, dude, that's incredible, man. We're out of time for today. It flies by so quick, huh?
Unfortunately.
But
it's not a real thing. It's just a mode that we use to think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have you back, and because I know you have a trip coming up, and where are you headed to?
I got to go to Vegas.
Okay, and practice out there, and hopefully get some more
I've got
people.
some real good people out there.
Okay.
A lot of good street performers, Cirque du Soleil performers.
Do you have anything before we get off that you'd like to tell to the audience, like anything you're thinking that they might need to know?
It's
Until
a
next
ghost in those mushrooms, you guys. It's a ghost.
Right on.
And it's sleeping, and it's waiting for you to acknowledge that it's there. And if you just wake it up the right way,
Exactly.
it can rewire your whole life.
This is true, man. Well, Vincent, thank you for coming on, man.
course,
I really
of course.
appreciate it. I'm
Absolutely.
looking forward to working with you, and even in like my own spiritual journey. And it was incredible talking to you. If you guys like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe with us, and we will see y'all next time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, man.